One of my first assignments when I came to NACE, our CEO asked me to create a performance management system that didn't have ratings. I thought that the proper course would be to teach the organization how to do proper assessments. And after a 2-year effort, I came to believe that we can teach, and there's always attrition, and there's reliability between raters not being what it should be. There's any number of things you could come up with that really do stall an effort to teach everyone to be better raters. So I did start to look for alternatives. At the time, there were several major organizations who had abandoned their rating systems, and I did a little research and was able to kind of open my mind a little bit, because again, I thought of all those things HR professionals think of. Defensibility, how will we manage merit, all those questions really that you do have to deeply think through as you embark on this process. How I ended up with Big Five, which is kind of accidental. I got an invitation from HR Houston, and there was this guy who was doing a presentation on raterless or performance evaluation systems without ratings. I went to the presentation, and I remember I was amused because at this point it had been about 2 years since my boss asked me to look into performance assessment without ratings, and the room was full of about probably 36 HR professionals, and Roger did his pitch, and I was very intrigued because I'd kind of gotten past all the reasons why we couldn't do this. I don't have enough time. It'll never work if we don't rate. It'll never stand up in court. We'll never be able to administer merit. I had kind of let that go and really was open to looking for something that really worked in our organization. And fortunately, was very intrigued by what I heard from Roger and the Big Five process. So I came back to my office. I had a meeting with my boss that very day. I talked to him about this system. He was intrigued. First we got the books. So I got Roger's book where he describes the process, and I gave it to our leadership team, and really just had nothing but support. Everybody was willing to try because really the goals that they wanted were more frequent feedback, more honest feedback. Really the annual, or I guess twice a year, exercise we went through around ratings was just frustrating for people. It was frustrating and time consuming for bosses and also for the individuals being rated. So everybody was kind of at the place where they were ready to try something different. The Big Five, now that we're in it about 8 months now, is a 100% success. For our organization, a monthly discussion of what our priorities are, what we've accomplished in the month, what were some of our barriers. That's where we have some of our best conversations are around barriers to success, have really just helped the group be able to communicate more effectively. The individuals who are completing the reports, again, you get into the groove. You start to understand. Many, through the course of the month, will actually work on, as a sort of a working document, their month-end report all month long. The amount of feedback is, I can't even guess how better it is in both quality and quantity. So the best advice I could give to anybody thinking about using the process is get the engagement and support of the leadership team. The leadership team is going to be really instrumental in delivering a message to the organization that this is going to be a safe process, that it will be a process that everyone will contribute to and participate in, and it is meant to make us all better. And if you have that underlying message delivered and the employees understand that leadership supports the effort and it is an effort to make us better, to provide more timely feedback, to let them have the opportunity to honestly toot their own horns in some cases. One of the things that I frequently heard when I first came to the organization was that the appraisal process only meant that they would be criticized. It only meant that they would have to sit and listen to what boss said and they wouldn't have an opportunity. And probably one of the largest complaints I heard was, my boss doesn't know what I do. So with the Big Five, one of the things we communicated very quickly was that you are creating this document. So if boss doesn't know what you do, or you don't feel like boss knows what you do, you now have a monthly venue to talk about what it is you're focused on. And it really has helped create more effective prioritization, communication, and really effort. Because if an individual says, my 5 priorities for this month are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and boss feels like they're really not focused where they need to be, then there's an opportunity to very quickly recalibrate. We, as a process, the first 5 days of the month, the employee is putting their data into the report, and then the second 5 days, the boss responds. Now, if there's communication necessary beyond that boss response, the need for more information about something, that's handled in a one-on-one meeting. It's not, the system is really not intended to remove face-to-face communication. However, it is the great starter for that communication to happen if it needs to happen. And if it doesn't need to happen, that's awesome too, because then you can just talk about what I'm focused on, talk about what I'm accomplishing, my boss gets to give me feedback, and really one of the more positive things I've heard is the amount of positive feedback people are getting now. Where before they felt the annual process was just a critical process, now they're more engaged in talking about, here's what I did. And boss says, that is amazing, that is a terrific job. And maybe boss might not have known about something that they did, which now the person, the individual employee, has the opportunity to say, this is what I did. During our implementation, one of the concerns was that a monthly reporting process would take even more time than an annual reporting process. We found that actually not to be the case. The employee over the course of the month, because they know they consistently report the same data each month, our 5 accomplishments for the month, what are our 5 priorities for the coming month, do we have some obstacles or barriers that are preventing us from completing a particular task. So because they're cognizant that they're going to be reporting on those every month, it actually becomes pretty quick. Again, I had some bosses come to me and say, okay, I have a number of employees and I really think this is going to take way too much time. The interesting thing is they fall into the same routine. I can speak personally for the number of employees I have, and I have 4 employees that I regularly give feedback to, and oftentimes I have completed all 4 of them in less than an hour. It's not that I'm rushing through. I do respond to the points, the points that they raise if they happen to have a question or seek clarity. I also comment on what they've accomplished. And again, I'm generally, honestly, I'm probably giving more positive feedback than I am giving corrective feedback. And if we need to have a subsequent conversation, we do that in a one-on-one meeting. So everybody kind of adopts their own style for what works for them. After about 8 months of the process, we don't have the concerns about time anymore. And I will tell you that, you know, having just escaped an annual performance review period in the old form, we are all much more happier these days. You're uncovering when there's a disconnect between employee and boss. So, and that only takes like one time to uncover. And then you start to get more lines. So if you're an HR professional considering using this process, let me just give you a couple of thoughts as to why you might want to get a little outside of your comfort zone, because trust me, 2 years it took me to open up to the possibility that there was a better way to do performance evaluations that didn't put people through the annual or maybe even twice a year agony of the performance appraisal process. Number one, it's easy to use. We implemented this process, and really to make it safe for the employees, we, for month number 1, said, okay, we're just practicing. And that gave them really the comfort to say, okay, I'm just gonna, because again, as you might guess, we're getting, well, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to do, I don't have 5 priorities. So we, for the first month, just said, whatever you want to put down, put it down. And we really did help the organization understand the expectations and really talk to bosses about how they could look at the reports, think through them, talk to the employees about what they're reporting. And really that kind of leads me to my second real benefit is alignment. You really can very quickly align your team around priorities. So if an employee created a report and they had, 5 priorities, and as you as the boss read it and 3 of the 5 priorities would not be something you would prioritize, that's fast. That's a fast fix. And who knows how long it would have taken to uncover the lack of alignment, if ever or at all, absent that reporting process. So it really does help the team very quickly get aligned, understand what the priorities are. It's led to all kinds of different structure and process changes in particular groups around making sure that they continue to stay aligned, making sure that they understand priorities. A lot of groups have gotten very proactive and started strategic planning and really getting in front of identifying the priorities to make sure that as the employees are creating their monthly reports, they are really focused on and with and at what they need to be focused on. The last thing I would mention as a huge benefit is really the quality of feedback. One of my big concerns as an HR professional was really defensibility. So if you have an employee who has a performance issue and we all know this happens, you end up in court or you end up talking to lawyers, I was really concerned, but we have to have the ratings because we have to justify, and we've actually already had this tested, and we had it tested very early on. So again, before we even got to be expert in the process, which is where I would say we are now after 8 months, we were novice to the process. And when the attorney reviewed the data, both with the annual review process in prior years and then the 3 or 4 months we had a Big 5, the comment was actually that the Big 5 feedback was so on point and so clear for the employee to understand what they should be focused on, how they should be focusing on it, corrective feedback. It was all right there in black and white. So honestly, for me, that took the whole defensibility thing off the table because it was clearly evident by our very first outing that we now were in a much better place than we had been in years prior. I know as HR professionals, we struggle with doing the right thing and creating the right mix of change and innovation with legal defensibility and the things that we have to have from a compliance standpoint on the HR side. So something like this can be really outside of your comfort zone. My encouragement to anyone who's considering this process is just investigate it, study it, maybe start it in one group. Really get creative about how you might approach this, because I tell you, if you can get it to get a little finger hold, people will ask and want it. We definitely had skeptics in our organization. Even if you need to start small and then go big, get out of your comfort zone and do it, because you can tackle any problems that you think might be associated, whether it's a compliance issue, whether it's a defensibility issue, whether it's a financial merit award issue. All that can be figured out. And at the end of the day, then you're left with a process that engages your employees, that allows them to provide feedback that they felt like they weren't getting to provide before, and they're the ones driving it. And that's, again, another key critical piece to understand. The employee starts this whole thing. So really, the days of them saying, boss doesn't understand me, I only get criticized, those days are over, because they're the ones driving this. And frankly, they can uncover very quickly when it is they might be struggling and can raise a hand sooner.